Alright, it is time to talk about every single book that I read in 2024. We are going to rapid fire talk about every single book that I read throughout 2024, which is 150 books. I'm going to give, hopefully, maximum like a 1 or 2 sentence recap of what the book is about and whether or not I think you should read it. Being concise is going to be kind of hard for me, but it's going to help because I'm going to group series together and try to be as broad as possible. If you'd like more detailed reviews, I do talk about them at my end of month recaps. My next video is going to be me tier ranking all of these books. So if you'd like to see where they fall within a tier ranking list for me, definitely check that video out as well. But without further ado, let's get into it. Mostly in order, here are all 150 books that I read in 2024. Solstice Miracle and Solstice Dreams are little novellas by Alexis Daria. They take place in the summer solstice and the winter solstice. They are cute little, relatively witchy little short stories that I loved. Take the Lead by Alexis Daria, essentially a wilderness survivalist TV show guy comes onto Dancing with the Stars and they have to get together. And honestly, I did not ship them. Pretty Human is a book in a long list of alien romance books by Ruby Dixon. You can pick it up as a standalone. Essentially, they're trapped at a party together and they fall in love immediately. I don't particularly recommend. The Maid Mishap series by Kimberly Lemming, I absolutely recommend. These are the 3 full-length novels that are in it. They're still kind of short. They have insanely long names, but I absolutely love the series. They are laugh out loud. They have really strong characters. They are just absolutely hilarious. They go on fun, chaotic adventures. I absolutely adore these. 10 out of 10. The 2 novellas, one of them is actually my favorite story out of all of these, and the other one gives me a serious ick. When She's Ready, When She's Married, When She Purrs, When She Belongs. I don't particularly recommend any of these alien romances unless you are in the Rubyverse and you're committed like I am and you're in too deep. I started my reread of the Throne of Glass series in anticipation of reading the next Crescent City series, but I only got 4 books in because they are the only ones that are free from the library. The last 4 are all on Audible only, and I never got to them. Truth be told, I did not enjoy them so much the second time around. I think because I just know more about the author now and I kind of know what's happening and I know the first books are not as good. I think I am going to try to restart the reread this year, but I'm kind of stuck in rereading hell for this because I also reread the entirety of ACOTAR and they were just not as enjoyable the second time around because I've been informed about the author's beliefs. I don't exactly want to recommend her, and I'm seeing now the second time around all the red flags and literally all of the characters and the plotline. Am I going to still read them? Yes, I have serious FOMO. I'm just not going to talk about them. Where the Dark Stands Still, I absolutely recommend this and anything else the author will put out. This is a magical girl, does not want her powers. She goes into the dark forest and makes a deal with the Lessie, who is the kind of spirit of the forest. There's a sentient forest, sentient house, really cute found family. I absolutely adore this book. House of Salt and Stars by Erin A. Craig. She writes the best YA meets gothic meets fairy tale retellings, and this one is a retelling of the 13 Dancing Princesses, I believe. And it is very dark. There are people that die all left and right, and it kept me on the edge of my seat. This was even a reread, and I loved it just as much the second time around. One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns, the Shepherd King duology. I absolutely adored these books. I read them in the beginning of the year and I still think about them constantly. It is a very easy to understand, very unique magic system. Our main girlie has powers that she's not supposed to have, and she's enlisted by one of the royals and they want to collect essentially this group of tarot cards that provide power to those in power, and they want to reunite the deck so they can banish all the evil things that are happening. But the king is evil and he's also trying to get the deck, so this is just fantastic. The romance is a bit of a subplot, but it is just so good. I read the first 4 books out of 5 in the Air Awakened series by Elise Kova. I really like her writing and I was really excited for this series because it's essentially Avatar in a fantasy world. You have waterbenders, airbenders, firebenders, and earthbenders, but I hated absolutely everything that the plot entailed. Our main girlie is the last airbender and she is sent off to war because her nation is the Fire Nation and they are literally taking over the world, like destroying the Earth Kingdom essentially, and she's like, wow, are we the bad guys? She also kills off literally every single side character just in order to push our main character forward, and I cannot stand that. This is also the year that I read absolutely everything that Ally Carter has ever published. I found this in a little free library. I read this back in middle school and loved it, and I picked it back up and I was like, you know what? Yeah, it still hits. And so these are only the 4 books that I have, but there are 6 of them. It's basically teenage spy school. This first one is super juvenile, but the second one, I don't have it. It is my favorite favorite of the bunch. It literally had me up until 3 a.m. like giggling and kicking my feet under the covers, like it was ridiculous. This also kind of ties into her other series, and I read all of them this year, in which it is a heist society, and it's a bunch of teenagers that go on heists around the world, and they are incredibly smart. They also have ties in with some of her other individual books that I'll talk about in a little bit, but literally everything by her is a 10 out of 10. I absolutely recommend it, except for her series that I literally tried to read and I DNF'd it. It is the Embassy Rose series, I believe. I struggled to get to the first book and I could not even get through the second. I was really disappointed. 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, The Trevi Fountain is a part autobiography, part travel memoir of my favorite travel blogger, and as somebody who wants to move into that space and actually just enjoys everything travel, everything about her life, I absolutely adored this book, and I highly recommend if you're into traveling, if you want to get into the travel sphere, if you just want to kind of progress your life forward, this is such a great story and I love her. 4 more Ruby Dixon books that I don't necessarily recommend unless you're deep in the hole like I am. When She Dances, When She's Bold, When She's Lonely, and When She's Pregnant. Oh, 2 more. When She's Merry and When She's Fearless. 2 books that I found on Google Play because they were free audiobooks, and for some reason I was looking for that right now. I absolutely do not recommend these at all. Scottish Werebear is exactly what you think it is, and Taken by the Dragon King, also exactly what you think it is. Do not recommend. Another one is His to Protect, same vein. Not If I Save You First is another one by Ali Carter. It's in the same world as everything else, but it doesn't really intertwine. Basically, the president's head of security and his daughter have to move to Alaska and go off the grid, and a few years later, the president's son has to come out and live with them for a little while. These two have a history together, and a Russian spy comes and kidnaps the president's son, and these two have to work together in the Alaskan wilderness and save each other. Most Ardently by Gabe Cole-Novoa. This is Pride and Prejudice if Darcy were gay and Elizabeth Bennet were a trans man. It is very much written in the same way that Pride and Prejudice was, so I thoroughly enjoyed this read. One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. There is a 70s punk Asian lady that is stuck in a time warp on the train, and our main girlie is a New York City girl, and they meet and fall in love on the train, and they realize, hey, she's kind of stuck here, let's try to get her out. I did not enjoy this book. It felt really weird and it just took way too long. I did not enjoy it. Birding with Benefits. 2 main characters, later in life, they have to fake date in a birding competition. I absolutely adore this book. They communicate really well. The smut's actually really good, and it completely reignited my love of birding. The Coldest Touch by Isabel Sterling. Our main girl suddenly acquires these powers of when she touches somebody, she feels and experiences their death, and she realizes that somebody's going to die very soon and she wants to stop it. She's assigned a vampire protector who wants to come and teach her how to use her powers. This sounds really cool. In execution, it was absolutely awful. The Bewildered Wife. This is a book that I borrowed from my cousin. She remembers loving it in the past, and I was like, let me try. She's a nanny to this really hot dad with all these kids. She gets struck by lightning and wakes up and is like, I'm your wife, right? And he's like, sure. How to Train Your Dragon by Cressida Cowell. Do not read this, just watch the movies, trust me. The Blonde Identity by Ali Carter. This is her first book in the adult romance world, and I'm so here for it. It's basically all of the same high stakes, fun adventures, really smart, really awesome characters, but now they're actually aged up to where I actually believe them. This is, she wakes up and she realizes that all these spies are after her, and so she teams up with this guy and she's like, what is happening? I don't remember anything. He's like, you're a spy. Very quickly they realize, no, she's not the spy, it's actually her twin sister. Snowed In with a Colon. Wow, this was awful. Our main guy is an Italian journalist on the run from the Italian mafia, and he ends up at this snow ranch, and essentially I think she owns the ranch, I don't remember, but they lock eyes with each other and they go, wow, you're so hot. There's danger coming, but wow, I can't resist you. Bride of Convenience. I got for free. I should not have read it. She is a very rich and fancy New York City socialite. He is a ranch owner in Texas who's very, very rich. He essentially buys her, compares her to cattle, and she shows up in Texas after saying, I'm never gonna like it there, takes one whiff of the Texas air and says, howdy y'all. Lore of the Wild. I will read any book about folklore, fairy tales, mythology, literally anything, especially when it has just the most beautiful, absolutely beautiful illustrations and includes lore from around the world, not just ones that are in the mainstream. Love Her Wild and The Truth About Magic. I borrowed them both from my cousin. She said she used to love them. I read them. They were okay. Very Tumblr-esque. Page Boy by Elliot Page is an autobiography, and I felt compelled to finish it even though it was really challenging. It felt a bit like a trauma dump, but it is really insightful. into how Elliot Page grew up and their hardships that they faced throughout their life. Burn the Page by Danica Rome was a lot more of an uplifting and hopeful trans autobiography. I didn't even know, but she is one of the Virginia representatives. I didn't know, but I loved learning about her. This is How You Lose the Time War. This is a very short novel written by 2 different authors, and they each write from each perspective of different time traveling spies. They work for 2 very different futures, and this is essentially how they fall in love while being on opposite sides of the war. If you really like grand scale flowery imagery, like really advanced kind of fantasy technology time travel warps, like things that are just not within our realm of modern day, then you'll really enjoy this. But if you don't like flowery language, you're probably not going to like it. Some of the stuff was very graphic, and I was kind of shocked because nobody talked about that. A few more Ruby Dixons. I think they were the last for the year. When She's Weary, When She's Spy, When She's Common. Again, if you're deep in the rabbit hole, go for it. If you're not, stay away. It's Trevor Noah, Born a Crime. I actually bought this book because in college I was going to use it in my classroom. I had to make a whole project about it. I really enjoyed reading it one more time before giving it up to somebody I think that would need it. It is his life growing up in South Africa, going through the end of apartheid, and kind of learning how to survive. And because it's Trevor Noah, it is hilarious. Written in the Stars, I thought I was really going to love. It is a black cat Capricorn with her own job, like her stability. I see a lot of myself in her, and a sunshine like zodiac business owner. And these 2 kind of get off on a wrong foot and they end up having to fake date. I really enjoyed it in concept, but in actuality it was really boring and I just did not read for them. Hooked and Scarred by Emily McIntyre. I actually really enjoyed Hook because I'm a massive Peter Pan fan, and there were a lot of Easter eggs in the book that are part of the original tales and the original books written by J.M. Barrie that are not in the Disney movies, and I really appreciated the nods to them. I felt like I was going on an Easter egg hunt throughout the whole time and just kind of enjoying the story of Wendy with Hook. It still wasn't a good book, so really the Easter eggs were the only things I enjoyed about it. Scarred is another dark retelling but of The Lion King, and it's basically this foreign princess comes to marry the older prince because she wants to kill them all because her family wronged him, and so she's like wants to be with the evil Scarred brother, which is obviously Scar from The Lion King, except they're really stupid because they're too horny and they get caught like immediately. Those idiots. We're supposed to believe they're really smart and they're not. Also, it's weird that it's like a story off a story off a story off of Shakespeare. Like I don't like it. So I stopped reading her story. I just don't think that kind of flavor of dark romance is for me. This Time Tomorrow I read in preparation for a book club in my city, and then I never actually ended up going, but I am very happy I read this book. Essentially, this girl is losing her dad to this terminal illness that nobody can figure out what it is, and you know, she gets really drunk one night and falls asleep in her shed, and she wakes up on her 16th birthday instead of I think her 30th birthday, and so she kind of goes back in time repeatedly. She figures out how to go back in time and just relive her 16th birthday, and she goes back and changes like, hey, if I actually made a move at my best friend, would we be together? And so it goes back in the normal day if she had done that, and she keeps going back in time. She gets very addicted to going back in time and changing and seeing what her life could look like, while at the same time just really enjoying her dad. This is one of the very few books in 2024 that made me tear up, especially as somebody with a parent with a very bad illness. This one hurt a little bit. Business Casual by B.K. Borison. This is the last book in the Love Light Farm series and absolutely my favorite. I saw so much of myself in both of these characters, and this is one of my 2 5-stars for the year. I love this book so much. I absolutely recommend reading this whole series. The Princess and the Hound. I found this in a little free library, and after I read it, I immediately put it away, and yet I still think about it. Our main guy at the same time falls in love with both the princess and the dog, and that's really all you need to know. Done and Dusted by Layla Sage. I saw this in the store and was like, oh my god, you are so beautiful, and a lot of things are just lining up in my life that I was like, it is time to start my cowboy romance era. This one in particular is not my favorite because she comes back to town and she falls for the brother's best friend. They're like, we can't be together, and 10 pages later they're together because they're just so into it. So the plot and the writing were not the best, but after reading a ton more cowboy romances since then, I'm realizing that unfortunately this is one of the best. However, I am very excited to read her other 2 books in this series. I haven't gotten to them yet, but I just know they're gonna be better. Triple Sec by TJ Alexander. I was really excited for this book because I've never read a book about a polyamorous relationship, and especially when they're all gay, and I just did not get what I wanted out of this book. I really wanted it to be like about falling in love and, you know, getting used to this polyamorous relationship. I'm really interested in how that could have been. Also, our main character is a bartender, and in the back of the book it says that all 3 of them are working together towards a cocktail competition, so I was so excited by all of this, but it wasn't that at all. Essentially, the first 75% was her just going on dates with one of the people in the relationship, and they literally could not see each other without jumping each other's bones. Like it really fed into the theory that polyamory. It's just people that are really horny, and I was really disappointed to see that. And now, because of my cowboy romance era, here are going to be a lot of cowboy books. First of all, I read the first series by Elsie Silver. I don't remember what the overall series is called, but it's Off to the Races, Out of the Gate, A Photo Finish, The Front Runner, and A False Start. These definitely do feel like her debut series. The first one in particular feels very much like a debut to me. I didn't particularly enjoy it. I did enjoy later books, particularly A Photo Finish and The Front Runner. I really enjoyed both of those. A Photo Finish is essentially like my ideal romance, and The Front Runner is like more realistic about what I want in a romance, like as a person. And so I really enjoyed reading these. They aren't exactly cowboys. They run a very rich and profitable ranch kind of thing, but they're not like out on horses ripping cows or anything like that. So don't go into it with like actual cowboy vibes. One of the love interests is a horse trainer, another one is a jockey, but it's just like you don't get a ton of the horses. And then I read Buck Wild by Lauren Landish, and I normally don't rate books that I haven't gotten to 20% of the way in. Like that's how long I have to give a book before I DNF it usually, but I DNF this one at 8% because she is a veterinarian, and of course she goes to the brother's ranch and she's just trying to save this foal, and our main guy is like, are you sure she's qualified? And she's like, yes, I'm qualified. And he's like, and then he proceeds to call her a bitch. And in my eyes, that is just something you cannot come back from. There is no way I will ever root for these two. So that put me off cowboy romance for a little while, and I went over to Haunted Ever After by Jen DeLuca. Essentially, this small Florida town is haunted by ghosts, and I really enjoyed the theory of this. It is very, very cute, very realistic portrayal of having a crush and wondering if they like you back. Our main girlie moves to this small town, and he is the coffee shop owner. I really enjoy this book in theory, but unfortunately it takes place over the summer, which just feels wrong to me. And also because of the dual point of view on her side, she's like, are ghosts real? Is this really happening? There's no way. And then on his side, he's like talking to actual ghosts. And so the whole time I'm like, I wish I didn't know. Like I wish it was only from her point of view so that like we didn't know that ghosts were real. I wish we had figured it out with her instead of just being told and then going back to her kind of stupidity. And then I read The Secret Lives of Country Gentlemen and A Nobleman's Guide to Seducing a Scoundrel by KJ Charles. I really enjoyed the first book. It is a member of the peerage, and he essentially inherits his title, and he goes out into this country house and he realizes that the whole area is run by bandits, and the prince of these bandits is the guy that he hooked up with not too long ago that he's kind of been obsessing over. And it's really like scoundrel and nobleman. Like our scoundrel is super flirtatious and like really like if you touch him I'll kill you kind of thing. I really enjoyed that book. The second book I did not enjoy nearly as much. It's 15 years later from the perspective of the little boy in the first book, and so he has become basically a clerk or like a secretary to another member of the peerage, and so it's their love story, but neither of them are scoundrels. All of the plot basically takes place over something that happened 15 years ago as well as something that's happening today. I learned way too much about inheritance laws in this book. It just was not nearly as enjoyable of a ride. A Dawn with the Wolf Knight is the last book in the Married to Magic series by Elise Kova. I was really excited for it, but ultimately I think it was a letdown for me. It's like a Little Red Riding Hood second chance soulmates novel in which she is accidentally ties herself to the moon goddess, and their evil lycans / werewolves are hunting down the moon goddess, and so they end up capturing them both, and she's assigned this bodyguard, and immediately they have a connection. I really like the idea of this, but ultimately I just really did not enjoy where this plot took it, especially in the ending, especially for like the last of a series. I just did not feel like this gave me any type of closure or any type of conclusion, and I just really did not like the ending. The Fall of Wit Rivera was a very YA contemporary romance fall book, and I'm happy I read it. It has some really, really great representation. Our main character has PCOS. She's also bi, her sister is autistic. The whole cast is just super diverse, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But unfortunately, at the same time, I also really hated our main character because she's super type A, and as a type A I get it, but like she was just, it was too much. She also starts out the book in another relationship, and I think it's way too quick and way too high schooly for me to immediately root for her with somebody else, even though it technically is a second chance. I don't know. Can't spell choosing without T. This is the year I finally got into cozy romance. Essentially are the most powerful mage in the world and one of the queen's guardsmen run away together because they've been in love for a long time, and they go and they open up a tea shop together. I thought it was really cute. They end up kind of having some adventures while they're there, and there are bandits there that they're like, all right, we need to figure out how to deal with this. I did really enjoy this. I enjoy it as a concept, and I definitely will continue with the series. It wasn't the best book that I've ever read, but I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. A Fate Inked in Blood by Jennifer L. Jensen. I love her other series, The Bird's Kingdom. And I was really looking forward to this book. I even bought it as a special edition from Barnes & Noble. This is essentially Norse mythology, but people have powers granted to them from the gods. It's supposed to be one of the typical enemies to romance lovers, so everyone's really loving this year. But unfortunately, I ended up pretty much hating this book. It starts out a little traumatic. I don't believe the way in which these two met. She ends up being bought by the Jarl, which is essentially like the king or the duke of the area, and so she is bought by him, and she goes into the army because her power is like the power that all the kings have been looking for. And the Jarl's son is assigned to be her protector. He has powers from Thor, and so immediately they are just in lust with each other. And the thing I really hated about this book is that they'd literally be on the battlefield, like people dying left and right, their friends dying right in front of them, and she'd be like, wow, but isn't he so hot? Like, we should have sex right now. It just played way too much into the enemies to lovers romance, like war romance right now. I wish with more than anything that the romance had just taken a back seat and let the plot kind of plot. Like, can we please go back to fantasy books with like a little bit of romance? The romance, it made me so mad. Truthfully, I'm not sure if I'm going to read the second book or not. I liked the ending of it because shit hit the fan and I was like, finally some plot. But I'm honestly unsure. I definitely will not be buying it. The Empress of Salt and Fortune, I did have to read the beginning like 6 times to understand what the heck was going on. But once I did that, I did thoroughly enjoy it. The second book in the series was actually my last read of the year, so I'll include it here as well. Our main character is a non-binary historian, I guess. They go around the world with their magical companion to get real stories from individuals that were there so that they can internalize the stories and bring it back to the people that will write it down in history. In both books, and I'm assuming the rest, are told in 2 different timelines. We are now today hearing the story from the first-hand person, and we are also being inside the story of whatever's happening in the past. So the first book is about the Empress who just died, and we go back to her time when she first became Empress, and the small things that she did leading up to a revolt. And our second book is about a tiger shifter who fell in love with a human. In the second book, there's actually active danger because talking tigers come and surround our scribe, and they're like, we're gonna eat you. And the scribe is like, wait, let's hear the story first. And so the second story was a bit more fast-paced for me, and I really enjoyed that aspect. Whereas the first book, they are in the Empress's house, and the scribe would find an object, and her old maid would be like, yes, I remember this, and would tell a story based on that object. So they are both very unique, very fantastic, just fantastic small books. The audio time is just 2 hours long, and so there's a very long series, and I absolutely intend to finish it. I'm really disappointed that I had to DNF Honey Girl. I tried to read it over the course of like 2 months, and I physically could not do it. Our main girl has just graduated with a graduate degree in astronomy, and she is one of the first Black women to ever do so. And so she is like, she's trying to get into the world of astronomy as, you know, a marginalized figure. And so she's like, I need to get in this. And people are like, oh, you know, good luck. It's all old white men, so good luck. So she has all that going for her. And at the same time, she's very much on the edge of burnout because all she's done is just get to that point. Her father is military, and he wants her to be a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. And so she's just feeling the pressure. She goes off to Vegas one night and finds out that she drunkenly married a stranger who was a radio talk show host over in New York City. And so this is her just kind of going through life. I could not stand the main character because she was just so passive and just let everyone else tell her what she could do. And then she just complained to us as the narrator, and I couldn't stand it anymore. I recognize that I'm beginning to talk too much, so I'm going to try to nail it back again. Murder for the Modern Girl, 1920s. The mafia is basically trying to take over the city, and so our main girl can read the thoughts of people, and she goes around killing all the evil men. And our main guy is a shapeshifter, and they have to work together to try to take down the corruption in their city. Ghostwood Song, her dad's fiddle brings back the dead, so you can kind of talk to them as a ghost-like, and her brother is arrested for murder, and everyone spends the whole time pretty much hiding all their secrets, when in fact if they had just told their secrets in the beginning, none of the problems would have happened. The instrument doesn't even come into play until like halfway through the book, and there's just too much of an emphasis. It's really random on a love triangle. It's very high school. Don't Want You Like a Best Friend, 2 debutantes are realizing that they don't want to get married, so they're fending off suitors while becoming best friends, and eventually over time they realize, hey, I actually like you more than a best friend, and they do end up getting together. And so this is them in Victoria times trying to figure out how to stay together. I don't particularly enjoy this because the way they're going to do that is by getting their parents together, and I don't like the way that feels. The Luminaries and The Hunting Moon are now some of my favorite YA books I've ever read. The third book did just come out. I haven't gotten to it yet. I'm about to go to London and I will get the UK version of it. I cannot wait to read it. This is Divergent meets Monster Hunters, in which everyone in their small hidden town has a last name somewhere between Sunday and Saturday, and if it's your last name, your family goes into the forest at night to kill all the evil spirits that come out. Except our main girl is realizing that things are not as they seem, and this book is, oh, they're so good. They're so good. I cannot wait. Also, beautiful. Delilah Green Doesn't Care. I am also disappointed in this. Our main girl is a wedding photographer and she is brought back by her stepsister to photograph her wedding, and she's realizing that she really does not want to go back because everyone was mean to her, but she very quickly falls in love with one of the best friends of the sister, who was a single mom, and I really like the idea of the story, but in actuality I really did not like our main character. I'm a wedding photographer and I did not like the way that she carried out her business, and also everything about it was unrealistic to me. It's one of those books that if they had just solved one miscommunication a long time ago, or if she just thought something through a little bit more, they would not be where they are today. A Fragile Enchantment was also deeply disappointing to me. I really love the setup of it. Our main girl is a magician and she is a tailor and she can imbue magical powers into the clothes, which I think is really cool, something I've never seen before. And she's hired to make the wedding clothes for the royal's wedding. This is the older brother getting married to a foreign princess. It's very thinly veiled. England is the royals, Scottish are her people that don't want her going there, and then the bride is Spanish. It's like very thinly veiled. Our tailor pretty much immediately falls in love with the second prince, who has plant magic, and everything goes downhill from there because they are just so stupid and childish and just foolish, and then get caught immediately, and everything's in political turmoil. The Scottish are trying to rebel, so like she's having moral obligation issues. Everything is just really stupid in my eyes. They also just wrap it up way too nicely with a bow, and it was not done well. And then I went back to my cowboy romance era. I read Cash by Jessica Peterson, and I can tell you right now that that series is already going to be my favorite cowboy romance series that I'm going to read in this entire venture. They actually are cowboys. There is no miscommunication. There is no third act breakup. They get through the challenges that they face with each other. This one in particular, she just inherited her father's ranch, and the foreman is not happy about that because he thought he was going to inherit it, so they get off to a rocky start, but eventually become friends and then eventually become more, and it's everything that I wanted. She also runs her own business designing boots, and I think it is just, oh, it is so good. It's so good. Everything after that was less good. Next is Rootbound, and I'm also disappointed in this. You're gonna hear this a lot, unfortunately. Our main girl is a photographer, yay, and she is hired to go back to her family ranch to take photos, and she's like, oh, I don't talk to them anymore because of family drama. One of the small details that honestly pissed me off so much is that the ranch is no longer an active ranch. They just use it as a movie set now, so there was no cowboy in it, no cowboy at all, except our main guy is also kind of the cowboy because he deals with like 4 horses or something, I guess. So she gets there, he shows her around, they fall in love. They actually kind of have a cute relationship. My problem with it was that the book felt like a family drama, half of it, and half like a contemporary romance novel, and between the two of them I was like pulled in different directions, and I was like, okay, what do you want to be? Because you can't be both of these things. So I wish that it had just been the cowboy romance, or it had just been the family drama. I think it would have been a lot better. Then I read Tame the Heart and Rope the Moon, and if you want an absolutely psychotic roller coaster, like family drama, everything is 10 times more dramatic than they need to be cowboy romance, this is the series. There's evil corporations lighting fires and destroying things in an effort to get you to sell their land to them. There are older brothers who all own this ranch together and have a lot of past trauma, all of them. We have main characters with terminal illnesses that are just trying to live their life. We have on-page death. This was the most action-packed, dramatic cowboy romance that I could find. And then I read Unforgettable, and I read this because the 4th book, I guess, is the cowboy romance, and I cannot start from the middle of a series. I DNF this one at 40% though, because she and her 4 older brothers have lived their whole lives at this ski lodge, growing up there because the grandfather owned it, and the grandfather just died and left it to the 4 brothers and not to her. And the 4 brothers have all their lives, but her life is a ski lodge, and so they have to sell to an outside buyer because they can't sell to her. And so this outside buyer comes in and they realize that they had just hooked up not too long ago, and I was like, I can't handle this anymore. And then I read Elsie Silver's Chestnut Spring series. Those are Flawless, Heartless, Powerless, Reckless, and Hopeless. When people recommend cowboy romances, this is the series that is always first, literally every single time. So I think in my head I had just hyped him up quite a lot. Who wouldn't in that situation? And I think that just really led to my disappointment. The first book of Grumpy Sunshine, in which she's a lawyer and she basically has to babysit this bull rider because he's getting too much in trouble with the media, and they quickly fall in love. The second book is, I think, my favorite of all of them. It's her best friend. She's like this reckless redhead who has no idea what she's doing with her life, and she's hired by his older brother to be the nanny to his child. This is the only one that has anything remotely to do with cowboys because he is actually like the rancher of the family, and I really, really like their story. I'm just really upset because I don't like children, and having the child be such a heavy emphasis on this book just really killed it for me. The next book is about basically their adopted brother. He is a pro hockey player, and he is into their cousin, who is a pro ballerina player. I hated this one because she's about to be married off to this really jerk of a guy because she has a jerk of a dad, and she just wasn't standing up for herself because these two have been in love their whole lives and just haven't done anything about it. And so the whole book is them running away from their wedding, running away from their responsibilities, and just being really dumb and lusty for each other, saying that they've been in love with each other this whole time. And I'm like, okay, I get it. You're both crazy though. And then truly my biggest disappointment was Reckless, because I was looking forward to this couple since book 1, because she is the older sister of the Sunshine in the first one. Her name is Winter, her name is Summer, and he is the younger bull riding protege of the first guy. And so I saw this coming from book 1. I was so excited because they both have intellectual, physical, and emotional chemistry, and just I could already see it off the page from book 1. Like, I was just so excited for their book. It was going to be so good. So they get off to a really firecracker start. The banter is bantering. I'm feeling so good. And then they hook up and she gets pregnant, and this all happens very quickly though, so I'm not really spoiling. And she texts him and he goes, "Thanks for letting me know." And then we have a time jump to a year and a half later to when she has a 9-month-old baby, and he comes back to town and he's like, what the heck, I didn't know about this. And so the whole book is them learning to be a family and then falling in love. And I'm so disappointed in this because I was really looking forward to them growing as a couple and individuals first, and then maybe later having a family. So having a family be the forefront was just beyond disappointing to me, trust me. And then the last book, I really love the brother. He's the middle brother, he's the funny brother, but basically he's like the Navy SEAL version of Canada, and he does go missing in an earlier book and he comes back, and now it's a little bit later, and he's clearly dealing with PTSD and a lot of issues on his own. So he's just not the same characters I was looking forward to. I understand he has PTSD, it's just not who I wanted to read about. And he goes for somebody, he's 35 at this point, he goes for a 22-year-old version, and the whole book just feels icky. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take another break on cowboy romances. This is when I read A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. This is a really cute YA laugh out loud wizard book in which our main girl has like the magic of bread. Like, she can make little gingerbread men dance, and she can get bread to not go stale, and she's realizing that evil people are taking over the city and they're trying to eradicate all of the magic people, and so she gets enlisted to try to like stop the evil people that are coming. It did get a little Anne Frank in the middle, which was kind of startling, but otherwise I did really enjoy this book. The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, love it in theory. It's basically Groundhog Day, in which our main character wakes up in a new body every day, and they have to solve the murder of the lady of the house. In actuality, it was actually atrocious because the book was way too long, way too complicated, and each body that we inhabit each day is a terrible person. When I mean that one of them is a con artist, one of them is just really fat, and the way they describe that is just like really, really hard to read. One of them is a literal rapist. It just gets worse and worse throughout the book goes on. It's also super, super complicated, and it took a really long time to get into the book. Like, we didn't get to the second, like, we didn't understand what was happening on page until page 100 when we were told on the back what was going on. And so just overall a really terrible experience. The Cloisters is a dark academia book in which people are researching the very first tarot deck in the cloisters in New York City. There is all of the happenings of a dark academia book. There's murder, there's drugs, there's psychedelic things. People are, you know, going way too deep into their studies. I did not particularly enjoy this one, mostly because our main character is stupid as fuck. Full Moon Rising by Ruby Dixon. I was going to buy this and I'm really happy I did not. The book is essentially an archaeologist has to run away from her family to join this archaeology guild, but she can't get in because it's a very, very sexist society, so she has to marry to get into it. So she strikes a deal with one of the Minotaur people that work for the college, but they're like second-class citizens. They will get married so that she can get into the college and she can help him through his rut. Now, I went into this thinking, cool, archaeology school, we're going to do some learning, and then it's going to be a lot of, you know, smut, of like Minotaur smut. That's what I went into it being. But in actuality, it was more of a political book, and the Minotaur smut was like 5% at the end. It was just not what I would want. That's not what I wanted in the book. That's not what I went in for, so it was a bit disappointing. Just is not typical at all for a Ruby Dixon book, and it just felt really weird. The 13th Child by Erin A. Craig. This is another one of her gothic YA fairy tale retellings. This one is Godfather Death. I really enjoyed this one in ideas. It's also just a beautiful book, and I do not regret buying it at all. I am just very disappointed in the story itself because we don't get going until later on. Godfather Death is just not who I imagined him to be, and that wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for the fact that our main character has absolutely no agency on her own at all. People just tell her what to do her whole life and she does it, and then she makes like maybe 3 decisions total and they're all disastrous, and so I cannot root for her. The love story is also just not something I can personally root for, and it's kind of shoved towards the end, so overall very disappointed in this book. I went to Disneyland this year and I wanted to read this before I went. This is just a collection of first-hand accounts of Walt while he was building Disneyland and how much of an impact he had on each and every individual detail. It was really, really fun to go through this, very nostalgic, and just made me really excited to go. The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year. Meet my other 5-star read of the year. Of course, it's Ally Carter. This one is essentially if Knives Out were a Hallmark Christmas movie, and it was just everything that I wanted. These are 2 rival mystery romance authors, and they get invited to the fictional Agatha Christie's house for Christmas because they don't have other plans, and so Agatha Christie goes missing, and they very quickly realize that something's afoot and they have to work together to figure out. The banter is bantering, the chemistry is there. It's just, they're so, because they're mystery writers, they're very aware of like, this is one bad trope. Like, it was just such a fun time. The Hedge Witch of Foxhall. I was really looking forward to this. It's a Welsh fantasy. It's about a nature witch, and she has to work together with the 2 princes of the kingdom to bring magic back to Wales. When I say it like that, it sounds awesome, but reading the book actually was terrible because there was too much emphasis on this love triangle between her and the brothers, and everyone just sucks. Literally everyone in this book sucks. They are all against magic. They are all backstabbing each other, and our main girl is just not one of my favorite characters. She's like hiding out in the woods, and her family is like, come inside, and she's like, no, I'm wild. I will say that listening to it was a really great experience, and I really appreciated the accent and like hearing all the words in their actual Welsh native language. The Nightmare Before Christmas. I really wish this was more Rise of the Guardians and less political fantasy. It literally made me hate Santa Claus, and it made me hate all of the characters. Two Can Play by Ali Hazelwood. Rival video game companies have to go to a ski resort together in order to get over their differences so they can work together on a new game, and it's from the perspective of our main girlie, and she has always had this crush on the guy from the opposite thing, but he's always given her the cold shoulder, and she's like, for what reason? I won't lie, I did not like him in the beginning, but because it's Ali Hazelwood, of course I was really rooting for them by the end. The Bear and the Nightingale. This is Russian folklore, basically in the 14th, 15th century, in which people at the edge of the forest are really still into the pagan arts. They are still leaving food out for the house spirits, and our main girl is a little girl, and she can see these spirits that nobody else can see, and so it kind of goes through her about 10 years of her life as she's growing older, and as Christianity is encroaching upon these pagan spaces. I really, really love the folklore aspects of this. The religion aspects were way too heavy for my personal opinion, but I can still appreciate what was in here. What the Hex is a reread and something I wanted to read on the plane because I was really looking forward to it. I wish this was a full-length novel, I swear, but these 2 that were academic rivals in high school come back to their witchy invisible island off the coast of Miami for their siblings' weddings, but they realize that all of the people on the island have been taken over by a demon, and so they have to pretend to be dating so that they can work together to solve, to figure out how to banish this demon. It's so funny and it's so good. Their chemistry is right there, and I love both the characters. This is when I tried to read as many holiday romances as I possibly could. Starting with My December Darling. This is my first Lauren Asher book, and I think it might be my last. It's 2 doctors that are the maid of honor and the best man, and they don't really like each other for some reason, but they keep getting pushed together and they start liking each other. All I remember off this is that they really like doing Legos together and that there's on-page baby death. A reread of one of my favorite contemporary romance novels ever is the first on the Love Light Farm series. She owns a Christmas tree farm and they've been best friends for about 10 years and they've both been in love with each other for that long. She asked him to fate date her so that they can pretend to be together for this social media competition, and their whole town is like, it's the definition of small town. Everyone's up in each other's businesses, everyone's rooting for them, everyone is, oh my god, every single character in these books are so good. It's laugh out loud, it's adorable, it's so sweet. These couple are goals and it is a little smutty and it's just, oh, it's so good in every way. Faking Christmas was one of my favorites. They're these two rival English teachers. There's a little bit of family drama, so she encourages her family to all go stay together at this Vermont little ski lodge cabin. It's really cute. It's a small little thing. And she's trying to get her family off her back, being like, yeah, I have a boyfriend, his name is, and she accidentally gives the name of the rival teacher, and then he shows up at the lodge because it's his family's lodge, and so everyone's like, oh my god, you're together, and they're like, uh-oh. So they have to fake date at this ski lodge, right, to get both their families off their backs. Except it's actually so cute because there is a bingo competition going on, and each bingo space is like a little activity for winter, like build a snowman, have hot chocolate, go in the jacuzzi, you know, all these things. And it's them doing these activities and realizing that they actually really like each other. It's so cute. Wreck My Plans, I DNF'd at 70% because I could not take it anymore. She and the way older brother's best friend are basically super in lust with each other, and they spend the whole time being like, we can't be together, we're so far apart in age. And she's like, yeah, I see you as a brother. And I'm like, I literally can't handle it anymore. A Newport Christmas, pretty much the only thing it had going for it was the fact they're in Newport, Rhode Island and doing like very Newport things. I really love it there. She is a social media baker and she gets flown all the way there to make gingerbread houses for the table centers at his sister's wedding. And so they're very rich. And so basically the sister is trying to matchmake her brother with our social media. I think it's really wholesome. I really enjoyed all the characters except for our main girly because she is not a functioning adult. Cruel Winter with You, another by Ali Hazelwood. Essentially, her younger brother's best friend has been in love with her his whole life, and the book currently takes place. She had to go over to his house to get like a pan or something in the middle of a snowstorm. He's like, I'm not leaving you alone, and we go back and forth between the modern day, which are like staring at each other, and then instances in the past in which he's like, I'm in love with you, but I'm not ready for you yet. I'm in love with you, but I'm not ready for you yet. I'm in love with you, but I'm not ready for you yet. And now in the modern day, he's like, I'm ready for you now. And it's like, if it weren't Ali Hazelwood writing this would have been awful. Resting Scrooge Race was a cute little novella in which they used to be together in high school and then they split apart. She like left for the big city and now she's back for the holidays, and he has written himself a little letter being like, the holidays just aren't what they are anymore. And this small town mailman is totally meddling. He steals the letter and he gives it to her because he ships her, you know, he and the whole town ship them together, and so they start having this anonymous letter exchange completely facilitated by the mailman, and the whole town is rooting for them. It actually is really cute. Holiday Hideaway, I could not handle it anymore. The whole situation is stupid and I hate all the characters. She was recently divorced and didn't really fight for anything, so she's homeless now and is squatting in all of the empty houses that she's a real estate agent for. And the one that she's currently squatting in, the owner has died, and so the nephew, I think, has come to try to like figure out how to sell with it, what to do with it. And so she's like literally hiding in the attic with her dog, and he comes in and he goes, wow, what a welcoming package. You left me Cheez-Its and toothpaste. Wow. Also, and then he calls his girlfriend, in which the girlfriend is like, you better come home so you can propose to me at this Christmas party. It's super important. And I'm like, I can't do this. It's all so stupid. And that was my last straw for holiday romances, so I went to other novellas to try to hit my reading goal, and it was such a big mistake because I hated them all. Branded is another cowboy romance in which she's a rising junior and she doesn't want to go home for the holidays, so she goes out to a bar. Our cowboy sees her from across the bar and is like, that's my future wife right there, and he goes up and he fumbles the bag so hard because obviously he comes on way too strong. The next day she sees an ad for a maid at a local ranch. She's like, perfect, I can do this. She goes up to interview. Who is it? Of course it's the cowboy, and he goes, all right, I will pay you outrageously and you have to live here. And she's like, okay, and within a week they're in love. Truth or Dare, basically a bully to lovers romance in which they spend all of their high school and college careers making art for each other. He's a painter and she is his muse. She is a writer and he is her muse, and they basically tell each other truth or dare throughout the years and fall in love that way. I just described it way sweeter than it actually was. Signal 33, Finding Zoe. A plus-size lady opens up her own plus-size clothing line. She gets a lot of threats, calls the fire department. One of the firefighters falls in love with her, and then she keeps getting attacked. And they're like, wow, but our love. Totally Spooked, a shifter speed dating romance. Don't ask me why I picked this up. I really should not have. It's obviously exactly what it sounds like. It was speed dating, but our main guy is a fruit bat shifter. I don't need to tell you anything else. Earl's Prize Curves, our main girly is taking care of her very elderly parents, and they essentially sell her off in marriage to their elderly best friends so she can take care of all three of them. And she's like, wow, my life is about to be awful. I want some passion. She tells this to her two best friends, and she accidentally leaves a smutty book at their house. And the father is like, by the way, the father of her best friends is like, wow, passion, huh? We shouldn't do it. And then immediately invites her to spend a week with him out in their rustic cottage. They do. She falls hard, and then he's like, wait, I think, like, I can't live without you. Like, is there any way you can not get married? And the people catch them in this conversation, and she's like, yes, we're in love. And her friends are like, wait, what? And he's like, yes, we will get married. The end. The Ice Duchess. I figured, one more crazy small Regency romance to end up the day. Our main girly was also married off to an old guy, except they actually did get married and now he's dead. And so now she's a duchess and she's trying to teach young debutantes to how to fend for themselves in marriage contracts so they can have better lives than she did. She was in love with her brother's best friend a long time ago. He was in love with her too, but he got scared, so he ran off to be a geologist. And then she got married, and now 10 years later, the brother has died, he's come back, and she's like, I never want to get married again, I don't want these shackles. And he's like, but I love you. And she's like, okay, shackle me up in marriage. That was the last straw. I was like, no more of these. Legends and Lattes, I am so late to the game and I'm so happy I finally read it. This is a very cozy fantasy in which our main girl, Viv, is an orc and she is setting up the very first coffee shop in town, and she just collects people to her store. She collects somebody that helps her build the store. She collects a little rat guy and he helps bake. She collects somebody who comes and works as a barista. There is a little bit of a romance in this. It is so wholesome though. She is constantly trying to fend off situations that are trying to like bring back the violence in her. She is a retired mercenary and there are things that are constantly testing her, needing to bring out her sword again. Overall, freaking loved the book. I also listened to Pages to Fill because it just happened right after the audiobook, and it's the little adventure in which she discovers coffee, and it was a really great addition. Barbarian's Treat is a little updated Where Are They Now kind of story of one of Ruby Dixon's stories, and it is basically a little Halloween. All the kids are trick-or-treating and whatnot. And then the last book I read of the year was When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain, but I already talked about that. So that is all 150 books that I read in 2024. I hope you got a few more added to TBR and a few more to be like, what the frick was that? I'm never gonna read that, but that was interesting to hear about. If you like this video, I'm going to go through all these books again in my next video, and I'm going to tier rank them all so you can see visually where they stack in compared to each other. I think it's going to be very interesting because we'll see if I can even remember them all. But thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.